Dear friends, this story is about a taxi driver who is accused of theft, but she saved his business. Watch to the end. The ending will surprise you. It was 4:30 in the morning. Sara rubbed her eyes tiredly, feeling her whole body filled with a lead weight after 12 hours of circling behind the wheel through the endless labyrinth of the capital's streets. Here, in a large metropolis, she was kept by work and a strong desire to save money to help her parents and younger ones, sisters, to finally renovate the family home in a small provincial southern town. Each closed order brought her closer to returning home. Okay, one more. The last one for today, she whispered to herself and confirmed on the terminal a bold order from the center with a high coefficient. The entrance to some trendy bar was crowded. Sara stopped at the sidewalk, looking at the cheerful and barely standing visitors. Suddenly, the door of her car they jerked so hard that the body swayed. A man literally burst into the cabin. The taxi driver immediately felt the heavy, suffocating smell of alcohol. Sara turned around, her brown eyes flashed. Hey, you're going to tear my hand out. Her gaze lingered on a sloppy, limp man of about 35. The crumpled jacket was stained with something dark. The tie had slipped to one side. The girl knew various cases with clients and was not going to stand on ceremony. Let's get out of the car. I don't drive drunk people. The man in the back seat raised his head with an effort. He focused on the driver and clumsily grabbed his wallet from his inside pocket jacket. Let's go, beauty. He exhaled, dousing her with fumes. Just take her where you say. I'll pay extra, 3 times more. He hiccuped and smiled stupidly, looking around at those standing at the exit of the bar. Just don't draw me off here. Do you hear? Not in front of these. He vaguely waved his hand to the side. Sara was suddenly pricked with resentment. You hunker down like that. Work all night long for the sake of the family. But such masters of life walk around, throw money away so easily, as if it was worth nothing to them. And yet the girl stepped over her disgust and blocked the doors so that the client would not fall out of the car on the way. Agreed. Triple tariff, she snapped. But keep in mind, if you ruin the interior, cleaning will be at your expense. Is that clear? The passenger did not answer. He had already closed his eyes, and a minute later, he was breathing heavily, with a whistle, all the way to the apartment on the embankment. Sara thought only about silence and her soft bed in the communal apartment. When they arrived, the client was absolutely useless. Sara had to get out, pull him out of the car. He was heavy, like a bag of cement. The girl actually dragged the man on her to the elevator. He could barely move his legs. The concierge downstairs abandoned to move, just curled his lips. Don't you want to help? Muttered the taxi driver. It's not allowed, he said coldly. In the wide hall of the apartment, Sara leaned the man against the wall. He could barely stand on his feet, looking senselessly at the door. Then he fished the keys out of his pocket and tried to insert one of them into the keyhole. Let me... Sara persistently took the bunch from his weakened fingers and opened the door. Be kind, pay for the trip. You promised. The client looked at her with a dull look and fell inside, where, after walking a few meters, he collapsed on the sofa. Go away. His hoarse voice was heard. That's it. Tomorrow. Come in tomorrow. Listen. Sara took a step through the threshold, but immediately stopped herself. Her voice trembled with barely restrained anger. We didn't agree that way. What tomorrow? What did you invent? I need to fill up my car today. The girl stood for a minute in confusion, looking at his prone figure. She would never have allowed herself to get into his pocket. Take someone else's and leave. This is not how kind parents raised her. Having closed the door, she turned around and moved towards the elevators. Inside, everything was trembling with indignation at the injustice. She scolded herself for gullibility, for being so foolishly caught in the simplest manipulation. I spent energy and time on this deceiver, burned gasoline, listened to rudeness, and all for what? So that the next rich man will wipe his feet on her and forget about the promise. What a bastard, Sara swore in her heart. Going down to the car, the road home merged into an endless gray ribbon. Sara drove the car on pure automatism, feeling her consciousness begin to treacherously double. The heavy smell of alcohol gradually evaporated, mixing with the cool morning air from the half-open window, but even this did not help to shake off the dope of fatigue. As soon as she closed her eyelids for a moment at a long traffic light, a completely different sound broke through the quiet, incessant city hum, the dry chirping of cicadas and the distant knock of a hammer. Before her eyes, as if in a faded photograph, her parents' old house in her hometown appeared. She saw her father sitting in the shade of the vineyard. He winced in pain, rubbing the injured knee, but still took the hammer and tried to straighten the rickety fence. "Lala, daughter, has arrived." My mother's dear voice surfaced in my mind. The younger sisters rushed past with a squeal, touching the hem of her dress, and their laughter was drowned in the noise of the working concrete mixer. The faces of the cheerful workers from Uncle Kareem's brigade floated before my eyes. In these visions, the roof of the house no longer flowed, and the foundation stood firmly. She perked up and pressed on the gas as usual. Sweet dreams, the girl thought. Their family did not live well, but there was enough money for everything until the father, a hereditary builder, was seriously injured at one of the construction sites. There was no insurance, debts for treatment appeared, and the old family house where the whole family lived began to literally fall apart. The roof was leaking, the foundations sank. Sara, the eldest of the daughters, always loved to drive. Her father taught her how to drive a truck as a teenager. At some point, she realized that in the capital she could earn more as a driver than any lawyer in their town. And now she has been working as a taxi driver for the second year. Having reached her rented room on the outskirts, Sara acted as if in a dream. She did not remember how she parked, how she climbed the shabby stairs. Without thinking about anything, she entered the room and literally collapsed onto the bed. A blissful emptiness covered her the very second her head touched the pillow. The sudden trill of a bell ruined the dream. The phone on the nightstand vibrated so violently that it almost fell to the floor. Sara opened her eyelids with difficulty. Outside the window, the sun was at its zenith. A strip of light mercilessly cut her eyes. The girl groped for a smartphone and stared at the unfamiliar number. "Hello," she croaked, half asleep, not recognizing her own voice. "Listen, my dear," a cold male voice was heard in the receiver. "This is Michael. You drove me this morning. My payment card has disappeared. I advise you to return it voluntarily before I handed over your data to the police. Your car number and phone number are saved in the application, so it's useless to run." Sleep instantly disappeared. An angry resentment for the double deception rolled in. So, he looked into the trip history in the aggregator, found her contact, but didn't he even think of apologizing for the night's disgusting. "Listen, good sir." Sara sat up on the bed, pressing the phone to her ear. "Before throwing around accusations, you'd better remember what you owe. What did you promise me for the trip? As a result, I carried you home with me for free." There was a long pause at the other end of the line. Sara almost physically felt how Michael curled his lips in an arrogant grin. "Oh, that's how it is. So you decided that I owed you, and took the payment yourself." The voice of the former passenger became even icy. "I repeat for those who are especially smart, either you return the card within an hour, or you'll have to deal with the police. I don't throw words to the wind." He hung up without waiting for an answer. Sara threw the phone on the blanket and sat motionless for several minutes, looking at one point. Everything was trembling inside. If this dude really reported her, the aggregator would immediately block the account. A license, a job, money to renovate a house. Everything she had lived for the last 2 years could go to waste because of one stinking drunk. She stood up, greedily drank a glass of water, and quickly pulled on jeans and a fresh shirt. Going down to the parking lot, Sara walked up to her workhorse. The sun was shining on the windshield glass. She opened the back door and began to methodically check every centimeter of the interior. When the girl stuck her hand into the narrow gap between the rear seat cushions, her fingers came across something hard and flat. Sara pulled out a rectangle of dark plastic with a characteristic metallic sheen. It was a payment card. It seems that the client really dropped it at night when he clumsily waved his wallet, trying to impress with his generosity. The taxi driver looked at the map, and two feelings fought in her soul: relief from the fact that she was clean before the law, and a burning desire for retribution. She resolutely got behind the wheel, started the engine, and drove off. She will look into his shameless eyes when she returns a piece of plastic to this owner of life, and he will listen to everything she thinks about people like him. If you like the story, give it a like. Sara rolled up to an acquaintance premium residential complex. The concierge watched her with a suspicious look, but she didn't even look in his direction, confidently heading towards the elevators. Having risen to the desired floor, the girl rang. The door did not open right away. The owner of the apartment appeared on the threshold in a fresh shirt and trousers, but his face was gray, and his gaze was prickly and gloomy. He was clearly tormented by a hangover. "They've appeared," the young man muttered. Sara did not let him finish and took a step forward, actually forcing Michael to retreat deeper into the hallway. The girl forcefully placed the black plastic right into his palm.
Choke.
"Lose yourself, and then blame others." Her voice rang with indignation, and before rushing at honest people, they would better remember that they themselves did not keep their words. "Where is the promised payment?" Michael was taken aback. He retreated under the onslaught of the guest into the spacious living room. Sara followed, not allowing him to come to his senses. She looked at his new shirt, at the panoramic windows overlooking the embankment, and her determination to take her money grew, chirping on the phone. "Good afternoon. This is from the legal department. Due to the declaration of your company as bankrupt, your personal card, which served as security, is blocked from now on. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning, a representative will come to you for a preliminary inventory of the property. Please provide access." The call was cut off. Michael slowly lowered his hand. Sara froze, watching how in an instant his heavy hangover arrogance was replaced by deathly pallor. Tone the caller left no doubt. Everything had just been taken away from this rich man. The rich also cry, an evil thought flashed, but was immediately replaced by a pang of pity. But he's about to break. Michael slowly put the bank card and smartphone on the edge of the table. He no longer fought back. A frightening emptiness appeared in his gaze. The young man trudged to the bar and took out a bottle of cognac. The taxi driver I watched as he tried to pry up the cork with shaking fingers, not caring that he looked pathetic. It's as simple as that. Sara felt everything turning inside. Did you give up? You have such an apartment, such opportunities, and you grab a bottle, and two of her fingers pressed against his cheek. My father flashed before my eyes. How he, overcoming the pain in his shattered knee, forced himself to get up every morning just to walk to the workshop. When Michael finally pulled out the cork and reached for a glass, Sara couldn't stand it. She didn't plan for this. The hand worked on its own, splashing out all the fatigue and indignation that had accumulated during the day. The biting sound of a slap echoed from the walls of the living room. Michael froze, not bringing the glass to his lips. The strange emptiness disappeared in his eyes. The awareness of reality flared up in them, acute and painful. "You, what are you allowing yourself to do?" he exclaimed, recoiling. "What are you allowing yourself to do?" Sara stood in front of him, with her hands on her hips. "In my city, men don't behave like that, even if everything goes to hell. You sit here, in the center of the world, and are ready to give up at the first blow. Your hands are intact, your head is in place. After an injury, my father repaired the boots of the entire street to feed us. And you just decided to hide while others decide your life for you." Michael looked at her, breathing heavily. A red spot slowly appeared on his cheek. The anger in his gaze began to settle, giving way to some strange surprise. For the first time in a long time, he saw in front of him a man who did not assent or flatter, but demanded of him to be a man. Sara suddenly realized that she had involuntarily gone too far. Her palm was still burning, and her heart was pounding against her ribs. She was expecting anything: rudeness in response, a call from security, expulsion. But Michael slowly sank into a leather chair and covered his face with his hands. "You're right," his voice sounded dull, almost indistinguishable. "Pitiful coward. That's right." Sara felt her rage begin to rapidly cool down, leaving behind a bitter aftertaste of awkwardness. She saw before her not the owner of life, but a man whose world had turned into a piled debris. "I believed in new ideas, invested all my free time and money in experimental developments. I wanted to improve the world, come up with something innovative. But I got carried away with people, did not keep track of the main business. And now the accounts are blocked. Revenue has fallen catastrophically. Investors have fled. He smiled bitterly. There's an auction today at 6 p.m. My company is being put up for auction for debts, and I didn't even have time to realize where did they come from. Do you understand? Everything that I have built for so many years will go under the hammer in a few hours. Michael nodded at the framed family photo on the chest of drawers. And my wife also left. She left as soon as I spoke to her that we were on the verge. She just filed for divorce and moved out. She said that she didn't have to drown with a loser. Well, that is illogical. Who needs one like that? Sara listened to him, and something inside trembled. She was used to the fact that in her world problems were solved honestly. Either you work or you don't. But here, in these expensive apartments, there was a smell of some complex, calculating evil. She automatically glanced at the frame with the photograph. Michael and a spectacular brunette with impeccable hair and an appraising gaze looked at her from the glossy photograph. Sara froze, looking more closely. Is this her, your wife? The taxi driver's voice became quieter. Yes, Jessica. Michael didn't even raise his head. She always knew what she wanted. Beautiful, smart, and now inaccessible. A stranger? Sara remembered. 2 days ago, sitting at night, the back seat of her taxi, the same woman, the same jawline, the same icy sparkle in her eyes. But in the car, she didn't look like a faithful wife going through a crisis. She laughed loud and infectious. I saw her. Sara turned to Michael. Her lively character took over again. I recently took her in a taxi. Michael raised his head. His eyebrows met in confusion on the bridge of his nose.
What are you talking about?
She was with a mustachioed man in a chic suit. I almost suffocated in the cabin from the expensive perfume. They were driving from the restaurant and were laughing so hard that I didn't even feel at ease. She also told him, Nicholas, this fool won't suffer for long. There's not much left. Soon everything will be in our hands. Nicholas. Michael slowly rose from the chair. Ghoul's son, my main competitor. He began to walk around the room, not paying attention to the taxi driver. Jessica, as the general director, managed my key business, logistics. I trusted her as myself, did not interfere, he whispered to himself, but the girl heard everything. A dangerous fire began to flare up in his eyes. The hangover completely evaporated. He stopped and looked at the guest as if she had just removed her hand from the table, and under it there was a missing piece of the puzzle to the unfinished picture. Michael looked at the photo for a long time, and Sara saw the struggle reflected in his eyes. He didn't want to believe in meanness, but the facts could no longer be ignored. He raised his smartphone. Sara noticed how his cheekbones tensed. The video call went on, and after a couple beeps, Jessica's face appeared on the screen. She was sitting in a bright office. Leather chairs and expensive shelving were visible in the background. There was not a drop of sympathy in her gaze, only cold, calm superiority. I'm listening to you, Michael. Her voice was even. I hope you're not calling to ask for money. I've already been informed that the decree on the inventory of property in your apartments has been signed. Be kind, don't make a scene with the bailiff. Sara stood behind the owner of the apartment, amazed at this everyday cruelty. She saw how the man's fingers squeezed the smartphone tighter. How do you know about the inventory, Jessica? The decision was made literally an hour ago. Jessica only slightly raised her eyebrow. This gesture said more to Sara than any words. This spectacular woman was aware of what was happening, apparently because she herself directed this blow. Are you calling for this? Jessica turned her gaze slightly to the side and suddenly froze, noticing Sara. Who is this? Nobody. Michael still couldn't believe his guess. I see. His interlocutor grinned. You've always been weak, Michael, but dragging some disheveled girl in cheap clothes into the house. I see that your taste has degenerated as much as your business. Losers always find solace among the same losers. The connection is broken. A long period reigned in the apartment silence. Sara was silent, feeling the blood rushing to her face. Her southern pride was hurt so deeply that she wanted to scream. She plows for days, and this lady in silk dares to look at her as if she were an empty place. So, She was just playing a role all this time, Michael spoke to himself. Taking advantage of my gullible blindness, she drained assets to a competitor. All reports in the system looked like impeccably clean, and I didn't notice the holes until the last moment. And all official documents were signed by my facsimile. Legally, I made all the decisions, but how did she do business with Ghoul's son? There must be real reports somewhere that indicate how much was leaving my company and where. Anger at the malicious brunette sharpened her memory, and Sarah remembered something from her recent trips. Michael, listen. When your wife was riding in my car with that mustachioed guy, she laughed and said something similar to the fact that she had all the documents on her home laptop in a hidden folder. They joked about the fact that they under your nose, but you will never find them. Michael hit himself on the forehead. Hidden folder on her laptop. He quickly got up and went to the table. 6 months ago, we had an accident on the server, and my systems specialist reconfigured the automatic copying of all data to the cloud on computers that were listed as executive workstations. Her laptop was part of this network. The young man began feverishly scrolling through the contacts on the phone. Since she accessed the network from it, it means that everything that she saved on herself had to go to the server as a backup copies. My IT specialist will pull this archive out of the backup. Their whole real kitchen will be there. Sarah looked at Michael, who brightened up, having found faint hope, and straightened his shoulders. And what do you want to do with it? Sarah hesitantly looked at the front door. You will return the money for the trip to me, and I'll go. But the owner of the apartment blocked her path to the exit. Sarah, don't leave. I have a plan. The IT specialist will get the necessary documents. I'll send them to Mr. Johnson. This is my best lawyer, although he has retired. And I need to get to the auction and stop the disgrace. I need you, Sarah. I'm for it like this that I won't sit in the driver's seat. And besides, you are my witness. You will identify the scoundrel Ghoul's son. Michael froze with burning eyes, waiting for her answer. I have to try. I have to be there by 6. And, Sarah. To be honest, I have nothing to pay you with right now. Consider it blocked. But if you help me today, I swear, I will help make your dream come true. The girl narrowed her eyes. The risk was huge, and this scoundrel has already done it once, deceived her, albeit in a drunken delirium. But something in his look, desperate and at the same time honest, made her nod. Okay, that's covered. But you promised me. Don't forget about it. She looked him straight in the eyes. Have you eaten anything at all today? Michael shook his head negatively. You can't get much done on an empty stomach. Go, call your hacker, and I'll figure something out. Sarah resolutely headed into the corridor, feeling that there was finally real work to do, and not all this chatter. Sarah went into the kitchen and was surprised at how spacious it was. The girl opened the refrigerator. Yes, not much. Apparently, the former owner was not very herself bothered with cooking, only yogurts. Still, she found a package of eggs, a couple of tomatoes, hardened cheese, and a bunch of cilantro, which miraculously did not wilt. Sarah wielded the knife confidently and quickly. Soon the tomatoes began to hiss in the frying pan, releasing juice, and the thick aroma of fried onions floated in the air. From a rag that she found in the depths of one of the cabinets, she prepared her version of the Caucasian breakfast, nourishing, spicy, burning. In this sterile interior, the smell of garlic and baked vegetables seemed invigoratingly appetizing and alive. Michael's muffled voice came from the office. Sarah stirred the sizzling mass, looking at the clock on the stove. She suddenly caught herself thinking that she didn't just need money anymore. She wanted this icy Jessica to see how her house of cards was collapsing. Enter disheveled Michael with a burning gaze. It worked. The archive has been found. Now they will send me the contents of that secret folder. Sit down and eat. Sarah almost forcibly sat him down at the kitchen island, placing a steaming plate in front of him. Dip the bread directly into the sauce. It tastes better. Michael broke off a piece of baguette, scooped up the thick mixture, and put it in his mouth. Sarah saw how he froze, and then began to eat faster, greedily, like this simple omelette gave him back his strength. This is very tasty, he said with his mouth full, without raising his eyes. Thank you. At that moment, his phone, lying on the table, made a short signal. The documents arrived in the mail. Michael bent over the tablet. Sarah saw his face turn pale and stone as he leafed through the files, sometimes freezing and reading. "She did it behind my back," the businessman said dully, brought it out. "Assets to the accounts of one-day companies, and registered it as payment for foreign cargo and consulting services. Legally, you can't find fault if you don't know the nuances." Then he looked at his watch. There was little time left before the auction began. "Now, to present this officially, you need a professional lawyer, and thank God I have one." The young man stood up and buttoned his jacket. "Sarah, you give me strength. You are wonderful, comrade." She saw that he was not disingenuous, he really thought so. And this suddenly gave the girl strength. "Let's go. We have to do it now, otherwise we'll be late because of traffic jams." She got up after him. "Let us go." He smiled at her. "Sarah, you're helping me out again. I don't even know if I'll ever be able to pay you back. We'll see about that." The taxi driver squinted and laughed. "I'll put you on a meter, Michael, if you deceive me again." While they were going down to the car, the young businessman managed to call Mr. Johnson, his longtime friend and lawyer, who once created the legal department of the company, but was fired by Jessica 6 months ago for a far-fetched reason. The voice on the phone sounded cheerful. The lawyer promised to prepare a motion to suspend trading as soon as he saw the files, after which Michael immediately sent them to him. Sarah drove the car confidently. The city was suffocating in traffic jams, but she knew where she could take shortcuts and where she could bypass without breaking the rules. She glanced every now and then in the rear-view mirror. Michael in the back seat was focused. He checked that all the files were loaded into the tablet and made notes in a notepad. At the entrance of the bulky building where the auction began, Mr. Johnson was waiting for them. An elderly man in a shabby gray suit nodded briefly to Michael, glanced at Sarah, and immediately handed the businessman the prepared documents. "Let's go. We have 10 minutes before the protocol." The lawyer turned to the door without much fuss. It was clear that this man had encountered this more than once. They approached the hall. Michael tensed almost palpably, and Sarah involuntarily glanced in the direction where his sidelong glance was directed. Two people stood at the window and laughed quietly. Jessica in a white suit, she looked like a porcelain figurine, expensive and soulless. Next to her, the mustachioed Mr. Nicholas Goulson held her by the elbow in a possessive manner, clicking the gold watch on his hand. Noticing her husband, Jessica stopped smiling at her companion. Her gaze, cold and appraising, passed over Sarah. She lingered on her simple jeans and jacket, and a barely noticeable contemptuous smile played on the woman's lips. "Michael," she raised an eyebrow. "Why are you here? Everything has already been decided." "I thought you had the courage to come to terms with bankruptcy." She looked at the girl again. "I see you decided to change your environment. Is this your support group from the nearest drink shop?" Goulson chuckled. Sarah felt her southern blood boiling inside. She wanted to first smack her pretty face, and then tell this lady everything about night trips and a mustachioed lover. But Michael suddenly put his hand on her shoulder. "Jessica." Michael's voice was unusually calm, without anger, morning hysteria. "You turn out to be more cunning than me. I have to admit it. To believe Mr. Goulson is preparing to celebrate his victory today. Well, it serves me right for my gullibility. I'm here only to make sure that everything goes according to the law." Jessica laughed theatrically. "Exactly according to the law, Michael. The law today is on the side of those who don't flap their ears. And all you have left are debts and dubious acquaintances." She stepped towards Sarah and said quietly, but so that Michael could hear, "My advice to you, run away from him. This so-called businessman by the evening will not even have money left to pay for your time. Losers are contagious." Nicholas snorted contemptuously and pulled Jessica towards the doors of the hall. "Let's go, Jessica. Let's not waste time settling down." Sarah stood, clenching her fists. She looked at Michael. He looked at his wife for a long time. "Why did you remain silent?" she hissed. "And she will trample you into the dirt." "Let it be," answered Michael. There was no pain or resentment in his eyes, only the cold calculation of a hunter who is waiting for the victim to walk into the trap. The higher she flies now, the more painfully she will fall. Let us see how they sing when Mr. Johnson opens the folder in front of the chairman of the commission. He gestured for her to follow him. Sarah went forward, feeling how adrenaline makes her heart beat faster. In the meeting room, Sara tried to keep up with Michael. Everything was alien here. High ceilings, people in formal suits, freshly printed brochures on the tables. Jessica and Nicholas took seats in the front row. They behaved like masters of a situation. "Please pay attention." The auction manager tapped his pen on the table. "We are starting the procedure for an open auction for the sale of the pledged property. Lot number 101. A controlling stake shares. Initial cost." "Just a minute, Mr." Johnson stood up without waiting for an invitation. His voice, dry and creaky, made the manager stop short. "I have an official statement from the owner. We demand an immediate suspension of trading." The manager frowned, adjusting his glasses, and spoke. "Listen, all claims are considered in court. We have a writ of execution. We are obliged to sell the asset. You will be obliged to explain to the investigation if you now make a deal using forged documents." The lawyer came to the table and put several sheets in front of the manager. "Here are extracts from hidden archives confirming that the company's debt to Mr. Goulson's structures is fictitious. These are shell companies created for the withdrawal of capital. Here are the agreements signed a facsimile, access to which was only available to the CEO of the bankrupt company, who sits with Mr. Goulson, without even hiding her affiliation with the previously mentioned gentleman." Jessica, who had previously maintained an icy calm, impulsively stood up and immediately sat down. Her eyes widened when she recognized the printouts of files on the sheets, which she considered securely hidden. "This is slander," she said. "This is just an attempt to stall for time. There are no witnesses." Michael looked at Sara, and the girl stood up. She knew that words were not enough here. "I am a witness that these two are not only connected by business, but also by personal relationships," Sara said clearly, and took out a memory card with a video recording from her bag. "In my taxi, there is a recorder, and everything that happens in the cabin is being filmed." Michael stood up next to her. "I am the owner of this company. I declare that on this the memory card contains a recording of their joint trip, and on it you can clearly see and hear how the CEO of my company shares confidential information with my main business competitor." He took a flash drive from Sara, their secret incriminating evidence, and put it on the table in front of the manager. Nicholas, who had previously been sitting with an imperturbable look, suddenly turned pale. He realized that the electronic documents, in conjunction with a video recording of their intimate and business agreement, this is a ready-made criminal case of deliberate bankruptcy. The auction manager looked at the printouts, then turned his gaze to the pale Jessica. Mr. Goulson rose silently and, without looking back at his accomplice, quickly walked towards the exit. Jessica remained sitting, crushed by the ruins of her plan for personal enrichment and the rapid flight of her recent lover. "In connection with the statement of fraud and the provision of direct evidence," said manager, "bidding is suspended until the circumstances are clarified by law enforcement agencies." There was an approving noise in the hall. Michael grabbed and hugged Sara. She looked up at him, and there was so much sincere gratitude in his eyes that the girl realized the game was worth every minute of the risk. Going out into the street, Sara felt an aching lightness, as if an invisible heavy weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Adrenaline slowly left, leaving behind a pleasant emptiness and a slight trembling in their fingers. At the exit, they ran into Jessica. She stood at the column, nervously pressing the phone to her ear. But, judging by her face, no one was answering at the other end. Seeing her husband, she became Arabic. There was no longer any superiority or icy calm in her gaze. Michael walked past without even slowing down. For him, she turned into only an unpleasant memory of the past. The city lived its own life, ordinary life. Engines roared, passers-by hurried, and the setting sun gilded the tops of the glass towers. Mr. Johnson shook Michael's hand. "We have a lot of paperwork to do with the investigation, but the main thing we have done. The assets are safe, the trading is suspended, and we will achieve their complete cancellation. Good night." When the lawyer left, Michael turned to Sara. He looked exhausted, but in his eyes finally appeared that what didn't happen in the morning. "Life. Sara, He fell silent, searching for words. "I don't even know how to thank you. If it weren't for that note of yours and not for your courage, I would probably be looking for a place at the station right now." He took out his phone and quickly typed something on the screen. The smartphone in his jacket pocket responded with a short notification signal. She took it out and froze, looking at the numbers. The amount that came into her account was several times higher than what they had previously agreed on. "This is for gasoline, for your wonderful dish, for preventing me from completely falling asleep this morning, for giving me hope." Michael smiled faintly. "And this is only a small part. I remember my promise to help make your dream come true. As soon as my accounts are unblocked, I will transfer the rest." "What is your dream, Sarah?" Instead of answering, the taxi driver opened a photo album on her phone and showed Michael the old parental home in a quiet southern town. Without ridicule, he nodded in understanding. "We will do everything." "Thank you, Michael," she said quietly, "but you are great too." Not everyone finds the strength to stand up when they were pressed so hard to the ground. "You proved that you are a real man. This is very important. I learned my lesson." "The cheekbone is still like a stone," he laughed, hinting at a morning slap in the face. "Will you give me a lift home?" "Of course." Sarah squinted slyly. "As always, at a triple rate." They laughed merrily and jokingly shoved their elbows, heading to the parking lot. Several months passed. Outside the window of the capital S coffee shop, dense snow was swirling. A message from the father was displayed on the phone screen. "Daughter, Kareem and his team finished the facade and covered the roof with new tiles. We are waiting for you within our own walls. Thank you, dear, for such help. You are truly golden." Sarah grinned contentedly. These months were like a long off-road drive. Courts, interrogations, endless paperwork, fuss with the removal of bankruptcy. She did not go home, although she was unbearably drawn. At first she was held by the case, the investigation, and then she realized that she simply could not leave this stubborn businessman alone. The door of the coffee shop swung open, and Michael approached the table. He was handsome. In his gaze appeared the determination and lightness that Sarah liked so much in men. "Sorry, I was late at the object." He sat down opposite and took her hand in his. "Mr. Johnson, of course, is a virtuoso. I didn't expect that he would return all the assets stolen from me by my ex-wife. Jessica is now awaiting her verdict under house arrest, and Ghoul's son fled abroad, leaving her to be torn apart creditors." Michael looked at the girl directly. "Are you still thinking about my proposal?" "Sarah, in logistics, I desperately need a person who knows the city and knows how to put people in a working mood." The young businessman winked at her. That same southern light that once brought Michael to his senses flashed in her eyes. "And that is all you can offer me, Michael?" She raised her chin, looking at him with a playful challenge. "I don't like stuffy offices." Michael smiled barely, appreciating her fighting spirit. He took a velvet box out of his pocket and put it on the table in front of the taxi driver. "No, Sarah, not everything. I would like you to stay next to me forever. It doesn't matter who and where you work. I need you. Be my wife." Sarah for a moment froze, looking at the ring, on which a noble stone flashed brightly in the light of the lamps. But the next second, a daring smile touched her lips. "Aren't you afraid, Michael?" She leaned forward. "I have a cool disposition. I won't toe the line." Michael laughed, and in this laugh there was so much sincere admiration that Sarah closed her eyes with pleasure. "I'm not afraid, because I know you." He pulled her to him. "And I won't let you go anywhere." Sarah clung to the young man. "I will agree if my father and mother like you." She pinched him to the side. "Are you ready to propose in front of my whole family?" Even now, Michael didn't hesitate for a second. 6 months later, they got married with the blessing of their parents. Dear friends, this story has come to an end. If you like the story, like it, subscribe, and hit the bell. See you in the next stories.